Well, looks like I've got a problem here. I can't stop reading this. So we're just going to continue on with Chaitanya Shikshamrta, Bhaktivinode Thakur, and this is chapter 5 about Bhav Bhakti, and evidently chapter 3 is unavailable. It's just not available. It's missing, it looks like. Whew, too bad about that. But we can go on to chapter 4. Part 4. This is chapter 5, part 4. And this is called Rati. Whether Bhav Bhakti or... Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pastai Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Tinamani Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharni Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paskitari Satarni Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Okay, part 4. Whether Bhav Bhakti arises from sadhana bhakti or from the mercy of the Lord or his devotee, in any case, it's nourished only by the association of Krishna's devotees. If that Bhav Bhakta happens to commit offense against the devotee, the priceless treasure of Rati gradually decreases and disappears or takes an inferior qualities. This is very unfortunate. Therefore, it's very essential that the Bhav Bhakta or any Bhakta is careful to associate with devotees in love and avoid committing offenses against them. By that association, anartha-nivritti takes place in sadhana bhakti, and the bhakta is nourished in Bhav Bhakti. Sometimes it seems that the priceless treasure of Rati is visible in persons other than devotees of the Lord. Pure Rati of the Lord's devotees must be understood properly. Not to speak badly of other persons or groups, for the satisfaction of devotees who have taken this question, the reply is given. Unavoidably, what is said here will be contrary to the practices of some groups. Please excuse us. By great fortune, the jiva attains Rati at the stage of pure devotion. It is impossible to teach Rati to others through writing books, and thus this book was written for those with faith in pure bhakti. If by chance other groups read, this is not our fault. If by good fortune they agree with the conclusions, then it's all the better. If they disagree, then they should give the book to someone else and not be offended with it, not be offended with us. According to the Abheda Brahmavadis, Brahman is without qualities. For worship, they must take support of some form, as it cannot be worshipped directly. The individual soul is endowed with qualities, so he cannot help but perform worship involving qualities. Because of this, at the first stage, the person being influenced by qualities should worship an imaginary form. Gradually the mind becomes fixed, and then he can utilize jnana and vairagya to search out the qualities of Brahman. Shankaracharya, the main proponent of Abheda Brahmavadi, had in his book Aparo Shanabhuti advised that if a person practices the 9 principles of detachment, discernment, control of mind, control of senses, indifference, tolerance, faith, conclusion, and desire for liberation, and deliberates deeply, he will attain knowledge of what to do. To master these 9 practices, he advises that following the duties of one's varna and ashram, practicing austerity, and pleasing Hari are the 3 basic activities which will qualify him for the 9 practices mentioned above. Pleasing Hari means worshipping devatas endowed with material qualities. Prakriti, Surya, Ganesh, Shiva, Vishnu are the 5 types of devatas endowed with material qualities. As the 5 devatas are worshipped differently, tantras giving the method of worshiping each were written. Their import is that the worshipping these devatas, the mind develops concentration. By practicing this concentration can be done without an object, and it finally yields a realization of non-distinction, nirvishesha. When this realization becomes deeper, there is realization that the self is Brahman. The Advaitavadis say that Brahman is the only substance or reality. Everything else is insubstantial or unreal. The devatas who are the object of worship during sadhana are unreal. In the final stage of nirvesha, these devatas do not exist. The devatas are imaginary, mental creations only. The deity forms as well are imaginary. Thus, Kali, Surya, Ganesh, Shiva, and Vishnu are all imaginary. Astanga yogis and those who worship the 5 forms are of the same ideology. They are all Brahmavadis and take liberation as the final goal. Though they understand that the devata they worship are false and imaginary, they still worship them. The symptoms of rati, or bhav, that they display during worship, they call rati. During festivals, they shiver, sweat, change color, shed tears, dance in ecstasy. Though these are symptoms of rati, it is not the unmotivated rati and faith that has been described previously in this book. How many types of rati are there? 5 types are seen. Pure rati, shadow rati, reflected rati, material rati, and fake rati. Pure rati is called Atma rati, Bhagavati rati, Chid rati, and Bhav in the scriptures. That function by which the soul in its pure state is connected with the Lord is called rati. At that stage, there is rati towards no other object except the Lord. The quality of rati is its exclusive devotion. Softness, smoothness, joy, taste, attachment are but different states of rati. The slight appearance of this pure rati is called shadow rati. Because of its meagerness, it's described as inferior, and it remains like this as long as the situation persists. But it creates happiness and removes sorrow. This chaya rati is experienced in association of devotees and while engaged in sadhana bhakti. It's not fixed, but fickle. Through association with devotees, even common people may experience chaya rati. By good fortune, the shadow of pure rati appears in the heart of the individual. For once this has occurred, the person can experience higher and higher stages. This is not real bhav, but a resemblance. By the mercy of the pure devotees, very quickly this chaya rati can become real rati or bhav. But if there is offense against the devotees, this chaya rati disappears. Due to association with devotees, the rati in the heart of the devotee gets reflected in the heart of the Abheda Brahmavadis and worshippers of imaginary devatas. The ecstatic symptoms that the seekers of liberation display during kirtan or festivals after seeing the ecstasy of devotees is called reflected. The symptoms of rati in these devata worshippers usually occur in this way. Experiencing that the goal of liberation is too difficult to attain by the methods given by their spiritual leaders, they express their difficulties to their imaginary devatas by showing signs of rati. From this they experience the enjoyment of their final goal, a small portion of happiness of liberation. Both shadow rati and reflected rati are but resemblances of rati, ratyabhas. They're not pure rati. Pure rati will only appear in a person who has accepted the eternal form of the Lord and practices real devotion. As the worshippers of imaginary devatas do not believe the soul is itself eternal, there is no receptacle or shelter for rati. For them, there is ultimately no particular form for the Lord, because their final goal is non-difference from God, where there is no object to which rati is directed. Thus, their rati may be called a reflection of pure rati, or may be a form of material rati, or even false rati. Where the shelter of rati, the individual soul, is considered to be temporary, and the object of rati, the Supreme Lord, is to be considered without particular identity or formless, the rati must also be temporary, a namesake, false, material or reflected. If the worshippers of 5 deities realize by chance, or by understanding the import of the teacher's words, or by development of ruchi, that the object of worship is an eternal form, and that the soul is his eternal servant, there will be a partial manifestation of rati. The rati of worshippers of Vishnu, Shiva, and Ganesh gradually becomes directed towards real knowledge and finally directs itself to Krishna. By meditation on the sun, the rati directed towards the sun gradually attains the shelter of Narayan situated in the sun. The rati of worshippers of Prakriti, gradually transcending meditation on Shakti, takes shelter of the Lord, endowed with all powers. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita that those who worship the devatas are actually worshipping Krishna, but without following the proper rules. At last they attain Krishna. The import is that as long as there is some conflicting element pertaining to the ashraya of rati, or the subject of rati, rati does not manifest fully. After rati gradually develops through cultivation over many births, the discordant elements regarding soul and the Lord disappear. At that point, it's possible to attain bhakti to Krishna. Of course, association with devotees is the cause of this development. There are many examples of material rati in the world, particularly in those people addicted to liquor, women, assets, and food. When Urvasi leaves, King Yayati gives up his life. Romeo gives up his life for Juliet. Many examples like this may be found in fiction. There are signs of rati, but what kind of rati? When the spirit soul becomes conditioned and thinks himself material, his swadharma, rati to the Lord, becomes distorted along with the soul. Giving up the Lord as object of rati, the person takes matter as the object of rati, and then displays symptoms of rati. The forms used by the worshippers of imaginary devatas among the impersonalists are also material. The effect that arises from material rati towards the material object hold good for the rati directed to the imaginary devatas. In hearing about Gulliver's adventures, the reader identifies with him, experiences the happiness and sorrow the Gulliver feels, and shows symptoms of rati. It is not surprising, then, that the worshippers, on hearing the pastimes of their devata, also exhibit symptoms of rati. One old woman, listening to the Ramayana, became overwhelmed with grief on hearing of Ram's departure for the forest. When others asked her the reason, she replied that her goat had wandered into the forest and never returned. On hearing the story of Ram, she remembered her goat and began to weep. Therefore, understand that none of the people that cry in the name of worshipping the Lord have pure rati, and among them many are acting out of material rati. This material rati may, in special cases, be a reflection of pure rati, in which the Brahmavadis and worshippers of imaginary devatas then manifest all symptoms of rati. The above 4 types of rati may also be deceitful. The unfaithful wife may show signs of material rati to avoid making her husband suspicious. With a desire to enjoy the offerings of the deity, especially goat meat, many low worshippers will display signs of rati. This is an example of deceitful rati, or cheating. With the desire for favors from Guru, fame from the devotees, faith from the uncommon people, faith from the common people, or to receive respect at large gatherings, many people pretend to have rati for the Lord, and exhibit dancing, sweating, tears, choking of voice, shivering, and occasionally the symptoms of bhav. But in their heart there is no sattvika vikara, transformations due to purified existence. Those who do not give proper respect to real rati for the Lord, due to the fact that there are many other types of rati in the world, are in a lamentable state. It is possible, however, that, without performing any sadhana, a person may suddenly develop rati for the Lord. In this case, it should be understood that in many previous lives he performed sadhana, but due to some obstacle, rati did not appear. When the obstacle is removed, the covering on rati is removed, and it suddenly appears. At that time, the devotee develops appreciation for the Lord and detachment for all else. And that is the end of chapter 5.